Hello and welcome to the AV Exchange. I'm your host, Joe Dunbar. We are presented by Midwich. As always, it's Thursday, June 19th. We are, many of us, not everybody, a lot of us are here in the post-Infocom haze, getting back to our day-to-day lives. I know Tom and I from Icron were chatting about this earlier, so I appreciate everybody taking the time out of their day to join us. You know the deal. We're going to run through the agenda real quick. We'll do some housekeeping stuff, and then I'll bring Tom in and we'll get to it. We're here with Icron today, which I'm super excited about because this could be a real nerdy and geeky conversation if you guys want to take it that way. We're going to talk about USB basics first and foremost. I asked Tom to kind of give everybody just kind of there's a lot of unknowns about USB. I think there's a lot of things a lot of people do know, but there's a lot of unknowns as well. So we're going to talk USB basic. We're going to look at some common USB devices and how those basic principles apply to them. And then we're going to look at Icron's current solutions and some kind of roadmap, future solution stuff. So I'm stoked about that. You know, we got to do the housekeeping thing before we get down that road. So use the Q&A for questions. You guys know it helps me stay organized, and that makes for a better show for everybody. Chat for general discussion. I feel like the days are kind of gone where people would sound off where they're from, but I'm up in the land of 10,000 lakes in Minnesota, so if you want to let us know where you're calling from, certainly do. It's interesting. We get people from all over the world on this, which is always really exciting. I'm going to launch our awareness poll real quick. This is really basic. I just want to know how familiar you are with Icron and kind of where you rank in the channel. We're going to do our best to not talk over or under anybody. We want to speak your language and talk to things that are important for you. And then at the end, we do a gift card giveaway. So $50 Amazon gift card. I have a wheel going, random wheel name picker with everybody's names in it right now, and I make sure I get them put in as we go. Relevant questions. If you enter relevant questions into the Q&A for the discussion and conversation, I will add your name in again for those. So certainly I want to encourage everybody to bring your questions and participate in the conversation, and you'll get an extra entry into the drawing for that as well. So appreciate everybody taking the time to do that. And without any further ado, I'm going to go ahead and bring in Tom Schultz. Tom, how are you doing today?
I am good. Thanks for having me on, man.
Yeah, I appreciate you coming here. I know we've been chatting a little bit in anticipation of this, and there was Infocom, and it's been a whirlwind of the whole thing. So hopefully it was a good show for you guys. Yeah.
Oh, can't complain. You know, we only won 3 awards.
Only 3 awards.
Only 3. Yeah, you know, small number for us. No, that was really good though. Yeah, we had a really good show, obviously. So but it's always nice to be home.
Yeah,
so,
right.
Bit of a whirlwind, right?
Yeah, and just we said before the show, I was traveling before this so much that I kind of Monday I sat down and it was like, what do I do here? I don't know what to do with my hands. It was very it was very much like that. So anyway, we're settled back in. We got the crowd pumping away here on the awareness poll. It looks like everyone here is very few folks are not at all familiar with Icron. Is obviously probably the most prominent signal extension company. I don't want to speak hyperbolic, but got to be one of the biggest brand names in the world for sure when it comes to USB extension. So most folks are pretty familiar with Icron, and we're talking to a bunch of folks in the systems integration category, which is pretty typical for us. So hey, Tom, I know you've got a bunch to go through. We are going to pull out the slide deck and jump into some things. USB basics was my first request, so that seems like a place to start, yeah?
Yeah, for sure. We'll talk about USB-C for sure.
Yeah, well, let's kick it off.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, first thing, let's talk about USB-C, right? Yeah. So USB-C is that amazing promise of that one connector that's supposed to do everything, right? It does the video, it does the USB 3, and does some audio and some power. How does it do all that? Well, it got complicated, right? So in the bottom right corner there, you see your like traditional, I'm going to say 90s USB connector with the 4 pins, and that was great because you'd always mess up putting it in. It always going backwards no matter how many times you rotated it. Well, we solved that by making it kind of, as you can see, like parallel in the Type-C. Which is really cool, but adds a lot of complexity under the hood, unfortunately. So when you do a mirror connection like that, you actually have to negotiate like what pins do what. And like you can see here, like in the blue, this is like where this high-speed data comes through. And that could be for USB. It could be for, we'll talk a lot about DisplayPort alt mode. That's where the video comes in. You see the power is mirrored as well. Like there's VBus, which is, where the power comes from on both sides. Our typical friend USB 2 is always there in the middle, which is great. I love USB 2. It's never going away. No one is ever going to make a USB 3 keyboard. Who needs 5 gig for a key press? That would be ridiculous. And then there's the complicated stuff. So you see like on the Type-C connector. You've got like in the pink there your CC1 and CC2. That's actually where things get complicated because now the host or the device and the cable and the thing at the end of the cable all need to talk to each other and make sure that, hey, we all support the same things, right? Because what happens, especially if you want to think about like power, if my cable doesn't support 5 amps and I plug into a 5 amp source, that's how fires start. So we have to make sure that everything can talk now. Your cables have chips on them now to make sure that they communicate properly. Devices and hosts have stuff to make it, make sure all the communications adhered to. And yeah, it got really complicated just to make sure that things, you always plug it in the right way. So that's always been
important though. I'm a little disappointed. This is totally. There's this old joke about USB-A that's like how many times does it take to plug a USB cable correctly? 3 times, right?
Yeah, or 5 if you're me. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
and now I'm like sad I can't crack that terrible joke anymore because USB-C has like made that irrelevant.
Yeah.
They've packed a lot into this cable though.
They did. Unfortunately, they also made it hard to build for, which we'll talk about and support. And then we'll also talk about like how now your cable went from a $5 cable to a $50 cable to make sure that it actually works for everything.
We all know that pain.
It is just amazing. So yeah. So moving on, that's kind of USB-C in a basics, right? How do you know what things do in USB? Well, the USB-IF, which is the USB Implementers Forum, has these standard labels for everything. You can see there's a lot of variation, and I'll try to bin them for you guys. The good news is that first row you can ignore now. That's a lot of deprecated symbols, but there's a lot to kind of unpack here. So kind of breaking that down, right? If you want to look at the first row, you got your performance metrics now. So it used to be like USB 2, USB 3, USB 3.1, 3.2, 2x2, and all these other garbage names. Now they just go by data rate. So it's USB 5 gig, which is equivalent to your old USB 3, relevant now, kind of like where Pro AV is kind of still like coming up to.
Yeah.
If you have like USB like 10 gig, it'd be USB 10, right? And that's your old 3.1. So now they've kind of settled on that data rate metric, right? The other thing important is power. This battery symbol now indicates if your device or port supports power delivery. That's for charging or for sourcing power, right? So my laptop, in theory, we'll get into it, should have that battery symbol next to the Type-C connector it's plugged into, right? Showing it does power. Things that do both, especially for cables, it has the data rate and the wattage. So this is how you make sure you get the right cable for the right wattage. These can vary depending on the power delivery version, right? So 65, 100 watts is kind of common, and that'll get you 90% of the way there, 90% of the time. And then if you're crazy and have like the ultimate gamer laptop, you need 240, right?
I know a couple of those people. Shout out Jesse Richmond, who does watch us regularly with the biggest laptop you've ever seen in your life.
Yeah.
So, this is kind of a change for me, Tom, from an engineering side, coming from like, I'm very locked into the USB 3.x, whatever, insert your versions and spikes. And I often on the actual hardware all the time, right? Sometimes I'm dealing with stuff I haven't gotten to see. So these mean something, and these are now in place of, these are the standard now. This is what we're using to what a cable can do.
Exactly. So this is what the new, I think I want to say 2 years ago, they tried to move to this. And obviously there's a lot of legacy out there. USB has been around since the 90s, right? I was in diapers, not to date myself, but like, there's still a lot of legacy. Still like there's some relevance to the old ones, but going forward, this is the standard. This is what they're trying to do. There's no more 3.x, 2.x stuff. Although you'll see even Icron's documentation will probably refer to it interchangeably throughout the document because
it takes time to make that change.
Takes time, right? Yeah. So we do our best.
This is good to know. And I think in the last slide, hold on a second, you might have done it, and I ended up saving it to a bookmark on my screen when we first started talking. Can you remind? It's the US. Who sets these standards?
So this is the USB-IF. So if you go to USB-IF, like actually USBIF.org, this is the standards body, and this is like where Intel and NVIDIA and AMD and all these guys come together and be like, hey, this is how USB should work.
I appreciate that. I'm dropping that in the chat for everybody. That's a good one to bookmark and know.
Yes, it's also a good place. There's a function on the website where you can go in and search products. This is a good way to find out where you can get compliant devices. especially when it comes to not necessarily data rates, although obviously buying like the cheapest cable ever does not necessarily mean you're going to get the best performance out of it. But I would argue it's very important for the power side of things because you want something that's been tested by a third party for power. I don't know if we all remember way back in the day, the guy from Google who would make a spreadsheet about which ones worked, which ones caused fires. I think he finally stopped doing that, but
Yeah.
yeah,
That's not the
always a good
best way
resource.
to approach the problem, but it worked for
Yeah,
the time, right? We'll take it.
exactly. Yeah. So I'll go back here. So symbols are great. However, the reality is, you know, no one actually always uses them. So my only comment here is that in this case, an Apple book, the worst offender of all, documentation is going to be key. You know, symbols are one way to do things, but not everyone seems to implement the symbols. So unfortunately, a lot of times our friends and myself will have to refer to documentation when we're doing installs and stuff and specing products. So yeah, just a note on that. That's kind of USB in a nutshell, right? That's kind of how it goes. So we can move on and talk about USB-C and Pro AV.
Yeah, let's get some application stuff. I love
Yeah. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is that just because something says it supports it doesn't mean it's going to support it out of the box. So I don't mean to pick on anyone. I'm just taking an example that is a common device from a common manufacturer. I love this company. I'm not trying to throw shade at them. They ship the product here, the Meetup, right? This is the old one. It is a USB 3 device. It's a 5 gig device, and it's made by here. It does 4K with a customer supplied USB 3 cable. What do you mean customer supplied? It comes with a USB cable. Well, the USB cable comes with is only USB 2. So if you use the cable in the box, you're not going to get the full capability of the product. So something to keep in mind. One way to double check is, again, check for these kind of things, stipulations in the product's data sheet. Also, a general background to USB capabilities. 5 meters is only for USB 2. So 2 ways to double check. Yeah, hopefully people get better, including documentation for these kind of things. But yeah.
This is a good example, Tom. I mean, there's kind of two pieces of this. One that we always kind of find in the real world is like, in our world where marketing and engineering, I don't want to say they're separated, but when you go to public facing websites, it's often heavily marketing material, right? And it's hard to find technical documentation. So one, if you're having trouble with any of the brands we have and you can't find technical information, please reach out to us and don't hit your head over and over trying to find it. And two, Tom, I mean, I think this is just reflective of the cost that's involved, right? As USB is advanced and got more featureful, now this is kind of the consequence of that.
Exactly. And then speak specifically about this application, right? When you've got like a camera and it has to go against the wall where your TV is and your boardroom and you're trying to get a cable to the table. Well, like a 1 meter cable, which is what USB 3 typically needs these days, or USB 5 gig, sorry. 1 meter is not going to cut it. So of course, Logitech included a 5 meter cable because that actually makes sense for the application.
Yeah.
Even though it does reduce the capabilities of the device.
Absolutely.
So you can't win.
Yeah, great example. Great example.
Right? So keep that in mind. We see a lot more USB-C these days, which is great. Walking the show, USB-C was pretty prominent. It was definitely a hot topic. Lots of discussions going on at booths, lots of new products coming out. I've listed some USB-C enabled devices here for your all-in-ones, right? So these are the things that where basically the same kind of application I just noted, where you've got a boardroom and you've got a TV, and this goes under the TV on the wall, and you need to get your BYOD, or like you want to connect your laptop to the device, and that's now being done a lot more and more with USB-C. So here's some good examples, right? You got Neat Bars, you got Logitech, obviously Cisco as well. D10, again, this is one of those interesting points here. D10 states DP alt mode and 65 watts, but doesn't say if it's USB 2 or 3 or which version of DP alt mode it does. So things like that, again, that are example of where, again, to your point, Joe, the application of engineering and marketing intersected and didn't quite meet. And then you got Barco there. So these are some common USB-C all-in-ones here. And you got your fancy boards. These are all pretty consistent, I found. So every kind of application for these interactive flat panels or these boards, they'll run Android, and I guess the cost is enough that they can just full feature these Type-C cables. So they all can do power, they all do the video, and they all do USB 3. So you're pretty safe on this category. There's not much variation, not like the all-in-ones.
Hey Tom, we have a great question that kind of slots into here. I know
Yeah.
Dawson wants to know if there's a way to look at the cable and see. He asked specifically, Dawson asked specifically, is there a way to look at the cable, see if it offers all media options?
All
I would
media.
be expand that to say, hey, is there a way to look at the cable and identify what it does support and maybe what it doesn't support?
It's supposed to. So this goes back to, well, I'll go back to my slides.
Yeah, yeah. This
Get these
gets
slides.
back to
Yeah,
the change in the convention.
exactly. So this goes back to this stuff, right? So if it doesn't have a wattage rating, it doesn't do power delivery, right?
Got it.
If it has a gigabit per second rating of more than 5 or 10, typically that means it does the video and the USB port. Especially for this is only for passive cables. Let me be very clear. Like active cables is its own mess, and I'm not going to touch it. But for passive cables, if it has a data rate above, 5, maybe inclusive sometimes,
Yeah.
and has the wattage rating, it should do everything.
Got it. So
Basically, that just means the conductors are, good enough for high speed signaling. And then for the power that the IC inside is going to negotiate up to that wattage, and it's safe to use it for that wattage, basically.
got it. I mean, at the end of the day, we're talking about data transfer, and there's X amount of bandwidth, and that's what it takes to
Yeah.
do it. So it sounds like the answer to the question, Dawson, is there are some indicators, and they're supposed to be much more clear than really they kind of are
Yes.
because of the changeover that is happening.
Yeah.
So I think the safe answer is still like let's defer to the documentation when that's an option. In the field, I think this is probably where this is most
Yeah.
applicable. Dawson's question.
Exactly. I'm
Yeah.
going to throw this slide again because obviously not everyone's using the symbols.
That's
Good luck.
I'm running two computers here right now, and one of them is a MacBook with
Yeah.
exactly those ports on it, and I totally
Yeah.
understand that.
Yeah. I mean, I love throwing shade at apples, and I'm more of a Windows guy. Hate to say it. But
Totally.
to be completely fair, my Surface that I'm using here also does not have symbols.
There you
So
go.
it's not just an Apple thing, as much as I would love it to be.
Marketing thing, I'm going to say.
Marketing. Exactly.
Um,
So kind of moving on. So obviously the biggest issue with like USB extension is like there's also switching solutions that we've come in. So if you went to Infocom, everyone kind of had like a switching solution like this or a new USB extension solution with Type C. Here's some options for you, right? May or may not be involved with my chipsets. I'm not going to play favorites here. But you have Lightware, you have Jenny, Alona, Extron, and Crestron, like your common guys there all have like really cool Type C solutions. I'm showing a Lightware one here. I'm not going to say why. That's pretty obvious. But they all have like a common feature set, right? For switching, especially, it's meant for BYOD connectivity. So like switching between the all-in-one or maybe your MTR or Zoom like application appliance, right? And then your laptop essentially, or maybe your phone if you're fancy. A lot of them do a power delivery up to 100 watts. They'll do host switching. They'll have hubs inside so you can connect multiple devices. And they typically have an extension component, right? A lot of these ones will have a base model, which no extension component, and then another model that has an extension. That extension will be based on a technology that may be SDDoE, it may be HD-based or maybe something completely manufacturer proprietary, right? Just depending on how they want to build it.
Can I ask you? I'm going to throw maybe a wrench in your day. This is a question just from me, and it is a little manufacturer specific. I know that you don't work for Lightware. As I understand it, do you know? I believe the Taurus does this, and I'm personally searching for a device that does this as well. But something that offers extended desktop over USB-C, over single USB-C. Are you aware of anything on the market right now?
We'll get there.
Oh, I didn't
We'll get
want.
there.
I didn't
Way,
want
way to spoil everything, man.
Oh man, as I do. We'll save that one.
Yeah.
Flag it. Flag it.
Yeah.
I do. I do have a question from Gary here.
Yeah.
Let me flip over to that real quick. Gary wants to know if most of the products negotiate the bandwidth supported by the cable. So like when you plug in a cable, let's say the product support 10 gigs, but the cable only supports 5. Will they automatically default down to 5? Do they know that when the cable's plugged in?
They're supposed to.
Got it.
Assuming the cable manufacturer did their job and put the settings correctly on the chip that's now inside the cables, then yes, that is absolutely what happens. And if there's no USB 3 connectivity like the charging cables, they just don't even have that conductor, so it's not even an option. Right?
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Gary, great question.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. I'm gonna also name some names for other USB-C extension solutions, obviously mine are later and better, but we'll get onto these. Kramer and solutions at Lone Aurora all do like a USB-C 4K 60 in. And this is that desktop KVM application, Joe, you were talking about, like, I want to get it further. How do I do that? Well, you can use these things, but again, they're based on the same kind of technologies as those switchers. And you'll see here, right? They all do USB-C in. There's some combination, some number of ports, and HDMI, USB-3, USB-C in, and then you go across the cable, and oh, I lost my USB-3.
Heartbreaking.
They're all like this.
Yeah, all expected it to work, and here we are.
Yeah. So it works, right? It's just you've lost, 5 gigabits of bandwidth. So your applications may vary. Like I'll go back to that meetup again, where it only does 1080p on USB 2, so you've lost that 4K capability of your USB 3 device potentially, right? And that's going to vary device. So yeah, that's kind of the state of things right now.
Yeah, and honestly, we can drive it home, man. I want to anybody on here who's designing, who's speccing, who's putting together a bill of materials, who's quoting, anything like that. You need to do your homework, mind your P's and Q's, and make sure you check the details on this so that when you put a solution out, your end user customer is getting what they asked for, what you set the expectations for. And that may be that, hey, we'll use the included cable. We're going to save some money that way and not have to manage cable. That's an okay thing. That's fine.
Yeah, totally fine.
Tom's telling us here that we need to look out for this. So I think that's an important thing. That's the theme for me today to take home from this.
Yeah, that's the main theme is consult the manual.
Yes, our favorite thing.
Do your best, and hopefully the manual will capture everything you need.
That's right.
Yeah, so that's the state of things today. But guess what, Joe?
You're here to fix everything for us.
I'm going to fix everything.
I know,
just like every manufacturer always promises.
Perfect segue.
Yeah, I'm working on those. So we'll talk about some new stuff from Icron first. We'll talk about just USB extension for a second here. I think most people are familiar with our Raven series of products, and I did include an old image. I'm a little embarrassed about it, but our first generation USB 3 products shipping since 2018 were giant. And we're like 9 inches by 5 inches and weighed 5 pounds, and we're just massive. We fixed that now. So we have a new products. This is our 3rd generation, actually. Some cool things here, right? This works over Cat5e now. We don't need a Cat6a cable. So you can use in-wall cabling. If you got an older install, you can just use it again.
Also a little less expensive. I mean,
little less expensive. Yeah. This
negligible in the scope of a project, but it's worth mentioning, man.
Yeah, no, exactly. So this retails as a set for $660, down from, I believe, $1,800. So a little bit of a cost savings from our end.
Slightly.
It's 70% smaller, right? You get the cheap cables. You get the Type-C interface. There's no more B cables because those things were the worst. 15 watts on the output, right? You do need to put the DC jack at the remote end, but you know what? You don't need it at the local end anymore, which is great.
That's awesome.
And no hubs. So a lot of people at the show were coming up to me and being like, oh, I have a big problem with hub tiers, and your Raven takes up 2 tiers, and my device takes up 4 tiers. This takes up no tiers now. So you don't even have to budget for it anymore, which is great.
Can you base level like 30,000 foot it for my folks maybe haven't gone down the rabbit hole with this yet? USB hubs and kind of how they play into your item count.
Absolutely, yeah. So USB by spec, and your operating systems will always enforce this, is that you can't chain more than 5 hubs in a row, right? And by spec, that's basically because of turnaround times. You need to get from A to B, B being the device, A being the host, within a certain budget. With USB 2 especially, that signal is not like regenerated, and there's no like active response back saying, I need you to wait. I'm speaking at a high level here. There's situations where that actually is true. But that's kind of where the 5 hub limit comes from, and that is enforced by LOSs. And basically, if you plug in that 6th hub, it's going to be like, hey, I can't do this. And just the device won't even work. Apple's even better. I'll have to dig at Apple again, but I am going to dig at Apple. They actually support 4 hubs because all their new M-based series products have a hub inside the laptop itself, so you only get 4.
So they're taking one up right out of the gate.
They're taking one up right out of the gate, which is just amazing. And even more amazing for my legacy products because I needed to chew up 2. So you only had 2 hubs, and then that was great. But now, ta-da, I solved the problem. No hub tiers with this extension. There you go.
Less expensive on the box, less
Yeah.
expensive on the cable, smaller footprint, and less
Yeah.
USB. See, this is no reason
No
not
reason.
to make this the default. Which
Yes.
I know, I mean, for our customers, the prior generation product already was the default, so this will be an easy. They'll happily take this.
Absolutely. Hope
I'm
so.
excited about
Please.
that. Yeah, yeah,
Please take.
yeah. Take a couple.
Uh, yeah, take a couple. Yeah. Now you can afford three. So what else was I going to say? Yeah, we support 31 devices downstream. That was always the case before. I know some other competition out there only supports 7, so you don't have to worry about device counts as well. So it's really good for those reasons. Oh, and it only supports 2 watts, so the power consumption again is more of a green product as well. So instead of 7 watts just being on, this is only 2 watts just being on. So
Wow,
much better.
wow.
So that's great for 5 for just USB data. What if, oh, sorry, use case. Sorry, use case. I got ahead of myself. Obviously, your host is somewhere. You need to get it further away from the device. A lot of times for conferencing, and what's going to go back to conferencing, it's cameras. Your camera needs to be connected, and it's not a meter away. Shocking. You can use this device to get your camera or whatever you need to over there.
Most convenient
So,
place for your camera, right next to.
exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Hey, sometimes it is. Sometimes it is right beside like the MTR and stuff, right?
You know, to be fair, my setup right now is very conglomerated, and that would apply.
Yeah.
But in a lot of boardrooms, as we're joking about, that is
Yeah.
not really the case. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm gonna flex and say I actually have one of these at my desk just because I can. So
Yeah.
even though it's going like this far.
Why wouldn't you?
Yeah, I've got to stand by my product. If I can't use it in my own setup for like
That's
games
right.
and stuff, I'm not gonna sell it. So there you go.
I appreciate that buy-in.
Yeah. So that's great for USB data, but what about video, right? That's the other one of the other major components. Well, same thing. We have a new version, and this is kind of our own video technology. It's new. It's great for us. This does 4K P60 444 and USB 3 over a single Cat6a cable. This is also now shipping, and it's got that Type C connector as well. I'll go into kind of the details here. It's a 2-part system, right? You have to buy a Lex and a Rex to make it work. You get your 1-link cable. This does your transmission of USB 3 and 4K video. So like I mentioned before, all the other solutions out there today are downgraded to USB 2. We don't have that issue. USB 3 to 5 gig, no problem. We have some pass-throughs because you know what? Some things are complicated these days. So you got Ethernet pass-through for any kind of networking stuff you need to do for control or just having network to go through and leverage that same cable. You have RS-232 for other controls like projectors, and you have RS-232 often. This will still do that. And yeah, this is, again, USB 3 and video in, USB 3 and video out on a Type-C connector, in and out.
Well,
Again, yeah.
fully fledged. I mean, the 4K 444 60. I've been stuck in this, Tom, this kind of conversation and battle for like maybe not 10 years, but for a long time, people begging for the 4K 444 60 frame full data rate. And so here we are with it. I have a weird question about this, and we do have a couple audience questions we got up, but where the Arbutus, where did this name come from?
Oh, so we're based so we're based in the Pacific Northwest, Vancouver, BC. Why we call it Arbutus? So Arbutus is a kind of a tree that's around our area, also Lake Seattle, Oregon. It's unique. It has like red bark. Like it's kind of cool. It's kind of a rare tree. I think it was endangered at one point, but maybe that's just my 10-year-old brain throwing stuff in. It's also in Vancouver. It's also a very popular street in the city. Arbutus is a very popular street. So we like to name our products after things typically in, especially code names internally, that are typically things that are relevant to the Vancouver area. Like our IC, one of our ICs we sell is called the Golden Ears. And why would you call it Golden Ears? That's weird, right? Well, Golden Ears is a region not too far from my house, right? I don't know why they called it that, but they did. So
I love that. I like when it's a connection to like where it comes from and where it's developed. It makes perfect sense, and that's kind of why I asked. We do have a couple audience questions piling up. Relative to the Arbutus and the 3301.
Sure.
This may even be a question for like Shirley on your team or Heather on my team. I'm not sure. So we'll try it if you can tackle it. Bryce wants to know, because Bryce is running into a lot of end users who will only use manufacturer approved hardware, right? And Bryce did offer an example. I know there's some approved hardware like the 3124 is approved for poly, right? Like that's a great example.
Yeah.
Are you guys working on getting these items approved for manufacturers to replace those old things, or is that something that the manufacturer seeks out? What does that process look like?
So we do enjoy partnerships with all these main project partners, like Logitech is someone we work close with. Poly, again, we do sell products into. We qualify with their products. Um, so we do have partnership programs in place. These are new products, so the website isn't quite updated. I should plug, we have a new website. Please go check it out. So you'll see things coming in more and more frequently as we start to roll out the products. We just started shipping. We will show those things in due time.
Okay.
I
So you,
will, yeah, I will say with confidence, like we spend man months of testing on these things, and we work with a lot of the popular products out there, both from feedback we get from support, but also just walk around shows like InfoComm and seeing
right.
like, oh, these are popular booths
Yeah.
or like things like that. So let's make sure we work with these products, right? And so we do that on our end as well.
I noticed that at the booth, at a lot of the booths, seeing the products that we have in there is awesome. We're kind of trapped in this world, and we feel it. Systems integrator feels it. Everybody
Yeah,
in between the chain feels it. Where everything's got to be certified and
yeah,
compatible, and those are kind of two different things. And so we're,
yeah,
saying, we know compatibility is across the board, but you guys are working with other manufacturers on a regular basis for
absolutely,
certifications as well.
absolutely, yeah.
Awesome, awesome.
Yeah.
Jerry had one. It was about the 3301 Eco. Jerry was just asking what
Yeah.
availability is on that.
It's shipping now. So Midwich will have them soon. I believe they're on the boat.
We were talking
So
about
yeah,
that.
they're on their way. Yeah, it should be in stock soon, but we fully released the product. So yeah.
Heather, maybe I'll ping Heather in the background here. Heather Sutton, our brand manager, and we have
Yeah,
Shirley Autel on your side as well. They work together all the time to iron these things out.
exactly.
Tom and I
Yeah,
spend our days in the weeds, and they make sure that everything we talk about can actually happen. So,
yeah,
but yeah, they're on their way. I
absolutely,
got to
absolutely.
imagine, Heather, you can jump in and stop me, but I would be shocked if we weren't accepting orders at the moment. Let me get some good info on that. But okay, so
Yeah,
that's moving.
awesome.
I'm getting it right now.
Yeah,
Yep, yep, yeah, they're skewed up
yeah,
and ready to go. So get with your sales rep.
yeah,
Awesome. Anyway, we're moving on. We were on the Arbutus. I want to
yeah.
say it right. Yeah,
I know. Yeah, it's a tricky name, but you know
yeah.
what? It's
Once
close to
it
my heart.
once it happens, once it happens a couple times, then I got it.
Yeah, yeah. And if you say it wrong, we still know what you're talking about, so it's fine.
Yeah, yeah, it's still fun.
Yeah. And then yeah, so I mean that's basically the product. And just like the Eco, no hubs. Again, 31 devices downstream. It's just like it functions like a Type C cable would as far as your host and device are concerned. We just take care of the protocol at that level and pass the data through 100 meters.
How
No
do you?
problem.
I mean, I guess if it's the geekiest thing ever and is real technical, nobody cares about. We don't need to get it. But like, how do you achieve the no hubs?
Oh, that's a patent.
Got it.
You can't talk
That's
about
what.
it.
That's a great answer. And I fully accept it. And
Yeah,
as a manufacturer, it's fun to throw that one out.
yeah.
I gotta say,
I'm
that's
gonna say magic.
mhm. that's
Let's leave it at that.
That's why you work. That's why you
Yeah,
work with Icron, the best in the business, man. That's the second
yeah,
time in the last week I've had to throw out that answer, magic, because it's a
yeah,
patent. Uh,
yeah.
and I love that. That says a lot of things about Icron and why they're the best. I don't even know what the number is anymore, Tom. I don't want to misspeak, but if you're handling a USB extension product out there in the real world, and it doesn't say Icron on it, there's still a decent chance that it came from Icron, right? That's the nature
Yeah,
of the world and how things
yeah.
are manufactured. So.
Like I said, like I briefly mentioned, we do sell like we have our Icon brand label, but like a lot of what we do actually sell is like the ICs we make, and the IC we made is in this product, the new
Yeah,
one. We have just 2.0 ICs. We have now USB 3 and DisplayPort ICs, right? So while it may not say Icron or ADI Icron on the box, there's like you said, Joe, it's a good chance we're actually inside.
yeah. So
Yeah.
that's good stuff. Folks, go ahead and get your questions in. Tom, we got a little more here. We're nearing
Yeah.
the deck?
We're just gonna throw some excitement, like I
Yeah.
mean, so I'm just gonna show the use case really quick, right? So you got your laptop, you got your USB-C cable with USB 3, you plug it in here, you plug it into the wall, just in case, right? For a lot of reasons. You can actually not plug this side into the wall, but you have to test that out. The user manual goes into more details. 100 meters extension, power at the Rex, and then into your all-in-one or your board, like we talked about, and then Bob's your uncle. There you go.
I say that all the time. It's one of my favorites. Bob's your uncle.
Feel like it dates me, but that's okay.
I maybe. So what what I want to encourage folks, there's a couple questions lining up. I am going to get to them, but I do want to ask about some roadmap stuff. So
Yeah,
feel free to pile in some more questions if you got them. Tom, what can you tell me about what's coming? Because
yeah.
that's what I always want to know about. What
Yeah, so this is the fun stuff. So I can't share too much, but I'll just comment on some things. So
please?
these are just first products with this new chipset, right? So we're starting with the basics, and it's just one port in out, Type C, video, no video, whatever, dedicated cable. Well, let's add some new functions, right? Let's make an Arbutus with power delivery, 100 watts, right? Let's add something with 4 ports. So you got a hub, you don't need a dock anymore. Let's add something with HDMI out, so you don't have to go into another dock and go HDMI, right? And that's again all 4K 65 gig. For the people who really need that immunity or need to go really far, we have fiber versions that'll go 300 meters, right? Same thing with the Raven, right? We'll add that Ethernet side channel into some other Raven side products for that extra control and Ethernet functionality. We'll add 4 ports, fiber versions, and then we'll also do versions that can be a Lex or a Rex, depending on what you want.
Mhm.
You buy one and just configure them, right?
Wow.
So those are
I'm
some.
kind of spinning right now. That's a lot of
Yeah,
ads and a lot of feature upgrades that we're getting.
you're gonna see a lot of products from Micron in the next like 6 to 8 months. We're gonna load up. Load you up. Heather and Shirley are gonna be busy.
Yeah, they are. Heather and Shirley are going to have their days are going to be booked.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Um, and then yeah, and then you know what? That's point to point's great, but what if dun, 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 it goes over a network? So
Yes.
now you can go and make it switch and do all sorts of fancy stuff with over a LAN. These products are just we'll have versions that say like a moniker of dash LAN after. So it'll be like the 3301 dash LAN, and now this goes over a network. And you can do switching, and we provide APIs, and you can build into your control network and all those kind of fancy things. So these are all coming, and this is kind of all like in the next 6 to 8 months. You'll see a lot
Cool.
of stuff from us.
I'm all about the roadmap and what's coming
Yeah.
down the way. What can I ask? So over a network, is there any special provisions that need to be taken into consideration? Does this need to be VLAN? Is there any, quality service things that need to be adjusted? What does that look like? Is it as easy as
No,
plugging
it's
it
it's
in?
meant to be basic and simple. So an unmanaged switch, it can be an N-based T switch. So if you want to keep your CAF IV cables, you get a 5 gig switch, and this works just fine.
Cool.
You get a 10 gig switch, and it works even better. So there's a couple of things like that. It is just kind of it is a simple solution. It is just kind of 1 to 1. There's not like a 1 to 7 or like 7 to 1. There's no like a lot of the fancy things you can do with video. It's meant to be a simple solution, trying to get around a lot of these kind of basic and often the more common issues, just kind of moving things around. So that's the
Open
intent. Yeah.
opens it up for existing infrastructure to be utilized, which in the commercial world is always something we're after,
Yeah.
especially in large footprints and huge campuses and things like that.
Yeah.
Icron certainly, AV over IP and video over IP are their own kind of thing, and we're not trying to step on that sort of ground. So that makes perfect sense to me. I love
Yeah.
the prioritization for ease of use. That's
Yeah.
especially when you even say the word network these days, some people might get a little gun shy. They're not
Yeah.
experienced enough knowledge or something like that. So big fan of that.
Yeah. The idea is you buy the switch, you plug it in, and it just works.
Right.
Over. So
Plug and play. Don't say the
yeah.
words around a lot of technicians because they'll come get you, man.
Hopefully not.
Yeah, right.
And yeah, I think, and then Joe, that's it for the roadmap.
Killer, man. Hey, I appreciate it. It looks like I got a couple questions here. This is I'm not gonna spit this over. Let me just get this. Pete had a good question.
Hmm.
In a world, I'm gonna reword this, Pete, so I hope I get it right. You let me know. In a world where there's a lot of solutions for extension, right? Particularly, Pete is asking about active USB cables,
Mm-hmm.
versus extenders, if there are any gotchas, if there's anything to know, when is one is right, when the other is right. Do you have any kind of comment or info we can get on that?
Sure. Well, I mean, I'm biased because I don't make active cables. I
Take
will.
it with a grain of salt.
So, but I will. They do have their place, right? So if you don't need to go 100 meters, and you only need to go like 5, and it's fine. So there's 2 ways to do active cables, right? There's like electrical signal regeneration, where you do like essentially you boost in the signal, so it compensates for the loss across the cable. Those are, eh, there's some good ones. There's some really bad ones. It's kind of yeah, it's hard to prove that it's good. There's not really a standard necessarily for testing active cables like that.
So this is more of
Um,
like if you know you've used it, you use it and have good experience with it, and they're repeating that experience.
yeah,
Then
exactly. So there's
right.
there's like not to plug anyone specifically, but like I will say Lightware makes very good active cables for USB-C.
Got it. Not
Um,
surprised to hear that at all.
Yeah, I will say some other things like if you were to buy a mono price one, it's probably not going to work. Sometimes these cables are just like hubs, so you'll see like a cable and then a bulb and then a cable and then a bulb, and these are just hub chains and they just solder everything together. Obviously, you're going to reduce your hub count doing that, but also they're not necessarily going to last because you got little PCBs and everything. If you twist and pull them, they're going to break pretty quickly.
Sure.
The other way to do it is with active fiber cables. I know Corning used to do a lot of these things.
Mhm.
Two things to watch out for there. A lot of these AOCs don't support USB 2.
Oh,
USB 2 is hard to do over fiber. USB 2 is what's called half duplex, where the same pins have to do both transmit and receive. So
got
it
it.
switches back and forth, and that's really hard to compensate over fiber because fiber is meant to just go one way on one side and not meant to switch directions on the same laser. USB 3 is nice because it's just like here's the transmit and here's the receive, right? So it's already broken out at a basic function at a physical level. So that's to watch out for. And then with active optical cables, they do have like a copper cable. Doesn't necessarily transfer a lot of power because they're trying to go for like that thin form factor on the cable. So watch out for that. And then yeah, that's basically it. It's
You,
fiber, so don't bend it. Right?
I
Like
was just gonna say you kind of alluded to it, but we all know
yeah,
that it is often more fragile.
yeah,
And where we see problems with that is more in installations and
yeah.
technicians having to really handle it with some kind of kid hands and gloves.
Oh yeah. We're
Very
trying to run through a conduit and like there's everything there. It's got a 90 degree and there's not enough lube in the world that's gonna make it go
right.
through
It's
that,
not
right?
gonna.
Like cable lube is not gonna solve every problem, unfortunately.
Yeah, I love it.
So
Definitely its place, but that those are the advantages of your extenders over.
exactly. It's field terminatable. You can replace the cable if you mess it up and you can make it as long as you want. And
Got it.
that's the CADX promise, right?
Yeah, right. That hey, we've all
Yeah.
it's getting better and better every day. And honestly, I really appreciate you mentioned this earlier just now kind of as I'm thinking about it, but it's so many devices as we've been going along and getting faster and more power and
Yeah.
higher resolutions, all that. We've had to bulk up in cable in order to support those higher bandwidths. So the consideration for backwards compatibility for legacy use cases, but also cost and ease of use. I mean, at the end of the day, probably negligible, but a Cat 6A, a
Yeah.
strand of 1,000 feet of Cat 6A is still more expensive than a 1,000-foot strand of Cat 5e. So,
Yeah. I mean, exactly. I mean, if you go into any new building, they're not going to put Cat 5e anymore. I mean, Europe's been ahead of the game in North America for a while. They've used Cat
definitely.
6 forever. But you know what? Not every boardroom needs a new cable run, and then that's just an installation cost you need to give your customer. And if you can win a quote because you didn't need to replace the cable, that's always an advantage, right? So,
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Well, we got one more question, Tom. It's coming from me, and
cool.
as always, I don't want to put you in a weird spot. Can we've used the term isochronous video a bit in the
Oh,
past.
yeah.
Is that still a relevant term? Does it still apply? Are we seeing that kind of feature in the new product set, or where are we at with that?
Absolutely. So before we had like a Raven that didn't do isochronous and a Raven that did. And the reason we did that is because it was an FPGA based solution, and the one that supported isochronous needed a much more expensive FPGA. So
Yes,
price differentiation. Now they have a chip, it does everything. It does the isochronous, so we don't need to worry about that anymore. It just supports it.
it's just in the chip.
Just in the chip. We don't need to call it out specifically anymore. There's no pro version anymore. It just is what it is.
Awesome. If we don't need to get super into the weeds on it here, I'm like, as we speak, pulling this up.
Yeah.
Well, Icron does have an excellent white paper that talks about isochronous video and kind of how it plays into the USB data transport world. So definitely go check that out. I'm trying to like find it as we speak.
Okay.
I know this happens with me. I have to host, but I
Yeah.
get lost in the conversation too. So
Appreciate it.
yeah. Well,
Yeah.
Tom. Hey man, are you on LinkedIn? We're getting on our way out of here then and gonna let everybody go. Where
Yeah.
do the people find you and how can we connect with Icron?
Yeah, so LinkedIn is the way to find me specifically. I'm on there. If you need to reach out for technical or sales questions, you go to our website and there's a contact form you can fill out for either sales or technical support questions. That's the best way to get in touch with our team. And generally, yeah, that's basically the best two options.
Perfect. I will shout out internally, who we mentioned a couple of times here. You have Shirley Autel on your side of the business. I have Heather Sutton on my side of the business. And there's other people, obviously, that contribute to making this team work together, which I really appreciate. But they, in particular, are chatting together every day on a regular basis in terms of inventory levels and, you know, anything on the business side. We get to stick to the nuts and bolts. So shout out to them. If you're looking for more information on Icron, definitely get in touch with your Midwich sales rep, and they, along with Heather and Shirley, can connect you with the right people to make sure you get the info you need. So Tom Schultz, thanks so much for joining us today, man, in sunny Southwest Canada. I hope it's sunny today. I have no idea what your weather's like. I just threw that in there, but I appreciate
maybe sunny.
Hi, my friend. Yeah. We will be in touch. Yeah, the last piece we got, folks, as always, is the I'm spinning it right now, the big wheel. It's one of my favorite things to do here. So the winner of the $50 Amazon gift card is going to be, fake drum roll because I don't have one yet, Bryce Palmer. Shout out Bryce Palmer. I want to thank you all for joining us so much. Bryce, we will get in touch with you after the webinar via the email you registered with to talk about that. If you liked what you had today, if you've got any comments, suggestions, please reach out. We'd love to hear them. And definitely check our website for registration for next week, as we will be back on the AV Exchange, and we'll see you then. Just kidding. I missed my cut. Hang on, guys. It's live.